Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. Over these first few episodes of the Perfect Bite, we've chatted with founders in the food space and how they've built their brands. But today, we're looking at things from a new point of view. What it's like to be an investor to build their own fund in the food, restaurant, and ag tech industry. I'm so excited for us to learn from today's guest, who went from being a startup founder to the founder of his own investment firm. Please welcome managing partner of Bread and Butter Ventures, Brett Brohl. Hi, Brett.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for joining us. We've got a lot of alliteration there. Brett Brohl, bread and butter. It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
I did not come up with the name, so the alliteration was not from me. My partner, Mary, the other managing partner at Bread and Butter Ventures, the name was her idea.
Well, I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that and how you guys got started. So let's take things way back first. I always love to start with, when did you first fall in love with food? And what were some of your favorite foods as a kid?
I've been cooking as long as I can remember. My mom tells stories about when she would cook, she had like 2 deep sinks and she would fill one up with water and stick me in the water so I could play in the water when I was a baby while she cooked. And so I've always been in and or around the kitchen. And literally, I mean, a lot of people would do, kids do like the lemonade stand on the side of the road. I baked cookies and sold cookies on the side of the road when I was a kid. And so did lots of little things like that. So I've always enjoyed cooking. I've always enjoyed being in the kitchen. I've always enjoyed food. I really enjoy eating. And so, as long as I can remember, it's been a big part of my life.
Holy cow. So you were an entrepreneur as well from a young age too. What kind of cookies were you selling?
I grew up in Florida. We had a variety. We also had some fruit trees like at our house. So we had like orange and we had a lime tree and the grapefruit tree. So I used to pick fruit and sell fruit also on the side of the road. And just would supplement it occasionally with a chocolate chip cookie from Fannie Farmer recipe book, actually.
Oh my goodness. I love this. So you've got a little bit of nature sugar as well as just a good sweet treat to go with everything else here. And Florida, I mean, that's definitely different than where you are now. You're in Minnesota. So a big change.
Yeah, based in Minnesota. We've been here for 16 years, more recently from the greater DC area, but Florida is where I was born and raised, and it is not the same climate at all. Very, very different climates.
Definitely. So from Florida, talk to us about school and how your career got started and how you became a startup founder yourself.
Yeah, I really did love entrepreneurship for as long as I can remember. I always loved the idea of you get to reap the rewards of your efforts and what you put into it. And all through, started selling fruit, but also I mowed lawns. I did landscaping. I installed sprinkler systems. Like I always worked. Went to college in North Carolina. And after college, ended up working for a bank for 2.5 years. And that was really the only job I've ever had working for somebody else. And I was a sales guy for a couple of years. And then actually went back to school with the intention of starting a company. And so that was my goal, was to start a company. And so I went back to business school. And it was like, you don't need to go to business school to start a company, but it was a great excuse to force me out of what was becoming a comfortable situation with an organization where I was doing well. And it gave me 2 years while I was in school to come up with an idea. I didn't have an idea, come up with an idea and start a company. And I tried 2 things while I was in school. And the second one stuck and left Virginia and ran with my company. I met my wife at school also. She got a job with General Mills, which is actually what brought us to Minnesota. And so she got a role with General Mills. And she's been in big food her entire career. And so that's how we ended up in Minnesota. I was running a startup and she was working for General Mills.
Oh my goodness. So food and business run in the family, and was a great connector for the two of you that I'm sure that you're still, it's so nice when you have a partner that understands what you're doing and what your day-to-day looks like and have that ability to talk about that stuff at home too.
I don't know if anybody really understands what the day-to-day of a startup founder's life is, to be honest with you, unless you've done it before. If you've done it before. But she was very and has always been very supportive of all my crazy ideas and like the crazy path, different journey that I've been on. But unless you've been a startup founder, it's really, really hard to understand what you go through.
100%. And everyone faces totally different challenges depending on the product you're building, the brand you're building, the industry you're building in, and just that time. I mean, some folks say, hey, I was able to raise like a friends and family round extremely easily. There are other folks, myself included, that was really hard just based on people I knew or the industry and the market I was building in. So what was that big idea that you were working on while you all moved to Minnesota?
I don't know how big of an idea it was, but it was an okay idea. This was early on in e-commerce days, and I happened to be in a friend's wedding, and I was looking for an idea. And the groom's father happened to manufacture uniforms, so scrubs, medical scrubs. And I asked him, do you sell online? He said, oh, and we got this great website, and we sell some online. And I looked at his website, and it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. It's like, man, if you think this is an awesome website and you can sell, I can do way better. And so it started out as a direct-to-consumer e-commerce company selling uniforms, and started with medical scrubs. And what we ended up building, though, what we figured out, like once we got in it and ran the company for a few years, we figured out that there was a real opportunity to use technology as a way to make it easier to sell direct to small and medium-sized enterprises. Things like in-home healthcare clinics, walk-in clinics, big in-home healthcare like franchises that were starting up. They were all largely buying uniforms from mom and pop. So we never went after the big hospitals because they were getting their uniforms, like they're doing wash contracts with a variety of big companies out there that do uniforms. But for the small and medium-sized, we were able to use technology. So we built a cool software platform where they could go in and manage their uniform needs.
That is very cool.
Yeah, it ended up working out pretty well. And we were early on in the space. And so that was the first company that I did.
Awesome. What was the second? Where'd you go after that?
Sold that company. It was like fun, like names like Scrubadoo and Preppadoo and different like websites for all the different types of uniforms that you were having. The second company, I built a consulting company doing digital sales and marketing consulting for a year. Didn't really like doing it. We actually sold that company after a year. And then the third company was a company called Boom Boom Prints, which is a direct consumer art marketplace. And so the idea was like Etsy. But
yes,
what we figured out about Etsy what we thought about Etsy was that artists love being artists, but they don't love doing all the business side of the work. They don't love doing customer service, the processing, the shipping, the management of returns, all of those types of things. And so we were building Etsy, but where we would handle all the back end for artists. And it was an all right idea. And we ended up failing. So I ran that company into a brick wall, raised venture capital for it. We ended up selling it, but everybody lost money on the company. One of the takeaways of it was we were right on the artist side. So we were right. And there's an idea here still. What we were wrong on is how hard it was to acquire. It was like family-friendly art, sort of targeting moms. And it was really hard to acquire the mom market. And we weren't really differentiated to them. And so when you build a marketplace, you have to be differentiated on both sides of the marketplace. And you have to be solving a real pain point on both sides of the marketplace. And we weren't. We were only solving a pain point for the artists, not for our end consumer. And so it was really expensive for us to acquire. We were growing slowly. We weren't venture backable. It was actually a slow growth business, and it could have been a slow growth business. But the idea that we should have done, or where we should have pivoted, was we had a cool kind of a widget. We should have been a plugin for everywhere artists were selling. So we should have been a plugin for Shopify, Facebook Markets, for Etsy, right? Where if an artist wanted to leverage our software to make the back end easier, they could sell wherever they want. But where we weren't a two-sided marketplace, we were a software tool for the artist. Still a good idea, I think. I don't think anything out there is like that.
This might be next. This might be a hobby. That could be.
Somebody else could do it. Somebody else can do it.
And agreed on building a marketplace. That was what my startup was based on. And it is so difficult. I think there was that period where Lyft and Uber and DoorDash and Grubhub, everyone was growing like crazy. And they were getting a ton of venture dollars as well. It didn't matter at what cost. It was just grow as quickly as possible. And that didn't work as well for the rest of us, who then thought, oh, yeah, great. People will want to support anything lifestyle related. And that was tough. It's really interesting that you've also done businesses across very different industries. Is that on purpose, or was there something behind each of those that you really connected to?
No, they were all opportunistic. The early stuff was all 100% opportunistic. I was very much like an opportunistic entrepreneur early on. And it's one of the reasons that I probably didn't stay with the companies longer than I could have. Like the first company, I could have continued to grow and build, but I wasn't passionate about selling uniforms. I just saw a market opportunity, a market need. Same thing with a consulting firm. Like I didn't care. It was like, this is not the most exciting thing in the world. We'll sell it if somebody wants to buy it. And so I never built a company that I was truly passionate about the product. I believed in what we were doing, and we were doing good things. It's not like we were selling crap, but the idea itself wasn't something that was driving me. It was the idea of building that drove me. It was building team. I love the entrepreneurial parts of what I was doing.
Yeah. So you were more passionate about being an entrepreneur yourself than you were about the problem or the product that you were putting out there. And I'm sure that really puts a lens then on all the folks that you talk to today and what you're looking for in terms of founders that you like to back.
Completely. I mean, I wouldn't back me with that type of idea, right? Because I think you have to be passionate about the thing you're building. And if you don't have a true passion about the thing you're building, entrepreneurship's hard. There's way easier ways to make money, way easier ways to make money in this world. Entrepreneurship's crazy hard, and most companies fail. And so if you're not passionate about the thing, one of two things is going to happen. One, when things get really hard, you're going to walk away from it and go do something else, which that wasn't me. Like, I'm stubborn in that way. But when you get an acquisition offer, and potentially an early acquisition offer, you're going to take it. And as a venture capitalist, I need big exits, right? I need founders to stick with their companies and build them until they're doing $100 million in revenue so they can sell them for $1 billion. And otherwise, we don't have the types of returns we need on our side. And that's the way venture math works. And we can talk through that if it's interesting. But if you're not passionate about the thing you're doing, the pain point you're solving, the challenge that you're solving, there's going to be opportunities if you're building a good company to exit along the way. And you're probably going to take them. And that's all right. That's what I did. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that path too. But it's tough to be venture backable that way.
Yes. And like you said, it's one of the hardest ways in the world to earn money is to be an entrepreneur. It's probably the easiest way to lose money.
Yeah,
as someone with that experience. So let's talk about what you are very passionate about today, which is Bread and Butter Ventures. Talk to us about how that got started and really the thesis that you built behind it. You are the first investor that we've had on this podcast, and specifically, what made you recognize the need to build a fund that was food and ag tech related?
Yeah. So real quick, so Bread and Butter Ventures, we're a seed stage venture capital fund. What that means is that we usually invest in companies' rounds where they're raising between $1 million and $3.5 million. So that's how we define seed stage, because there's a lot of gray area around it. We usually write around $1 million check into those companies, and we invest in a couple core verticals. Food tech is one of them, technology for the food industry, which is what I lead for our fund. My partner, Mary, leads our digital health practice. And then we both do invest in some general enterprise SaaS as well. We're geo-agnostic, so we invest anywhere in the world. Most of our investments are focused on the United States and companies that are based in the United States. So that's like the really short version of the fund. And what we try and do, we're based in Minnesota. And so we try to leverage all of the advantages that Minnesota has for our portfolio companies. And so Minnesota is great at food and ag and health. And so I argue that Minnesota is the epicenter of enterprise food in the world. You have the largest food company here. You have the largest food safety company in the world here. You have one of the largest food retailers in the world based here. And then you have a variety of other Fortune 500 food companies that aren't even one of those three, like General Mills, Land O'Lakes, Hormel. And so there's a tremendous amount of food expertise here. And we want to leverage that for when we're doing diligence on a company or thinking about a company, but also making introductions to them for our portfolios. Same thing can be said about the health system here. So that's why we invest where we invest and what our thesis was born out of. We weren't that smart when we first started it, largely because it was just me at the beginning, and my partner Mary had it come on because she really helped us drill in and narrow down and think about our thesis and how are we truly differentiated. But that's the thesis overall. How we got started, I'm happy to dive into, is sold my last company, the Art One. But I had good relationships with the founders, the investors whose money I just lost still, which is an interesting part of venture capital, which is quite different than a lot of other industries, where you can do that, right? Like you can lose everybody's money and still have a good relationship with them because they know what they're doing. They know what they're getting into. And
yeah,
they know that
it's a gamble.
Yeah, they know that
really
90% of their companies aren't going to have great returns for them, or 80% of their companies aren't going to have great returns for them. But they like backing good people. And so a couple of them basically said, hey, come help us out, help our portfolio companies out while you're working on your next idea. We'll invest in your next idea. And I was like, if I'm going to do this again, because entrepreneurship's hard, I'm going to come up with something that like I really am passionate about and I think can be a multi-billion-dollar company. Otherwise, I'm not going to try again from a startup perspective. And while I was doing that, I started angel investing, really liked the investing side of the world, got the opportunity to start working with Techstars, which is a global accelerator program. And I actually pitched Techstars on building a food tech program and said, hey, you should run a food tech program. It should be based in Minnesota. And so I had the opportunity to build that and built the food tech practice for Techstars, which is still going. I don't run it any longer. And so that kind of moved me to the investor side. So I simultaneously raised a venture capital fund, said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make venture my full-time thing. And so I raised the first version of Bread and Butter Ventures in 2017. I invested it, raised the second version of Bread and Butter Ventures and started investing in 2019. And then Mary and I, who's my partner, met, or we actually had met a long time ago, but we decided to partner halfway through the second fund. And the rest is kind of history. We're now investing out of our fourth fund, which is a $40 million fund. Our first fund was a $1 million fund, just over $1 million. And so just to give you an idea of the trajectory, and it's grown pretty quickly to get to 40. So that's us. That's how we started and kind of where we're at.
That's incredible. So love this. That's the same in our household as well in that sense. We're a Techstars household, as well as my partner had built a small fund out of Chicago as well. And it's tough when you're raising money to then invest in others. It is really hard to fundraise at first. And so congrats on getting to Fund 4 and 40 million. Talk to us a little bit about that process. So one, how'd you meet Mary all those years ago? And what was her kind of impetus of, yes, I want to get started? And what were those first few years like? How were you figuring out what companies are we sourcing to be portfolio companies? How did you then dial in on that thesis and start to learn about what's going on in these industries?
Yeah. So Mary and I met. She has a nonprofit. She was still at Google. So Mary's background, she was at Google. Her and her husband, Steve, he's from Minnesota. She's not. They live here now. They had a nonprofit organization called Silicon North Stars, focused on helping youth from underprivileged backgrounds learn about technology and entrepreneurship. And they needed some help. They needed some mentors. And so I volunteered. I said, yeah, I volunteered and helped with the nonprofit. And I gave talks and met with kids. And that's how we met. So our relationship started through her nonprofit organization. And then they moved back to Minnesota. They had started a family, and Steve has like 70 extended family members in greater Minnesota still. So they moved here to be closer to the family. And she actually took a role with another fund for a couple of years as an investing partner. But we had a great relationship. We'd done a variety of other things together. We gave talks together. We really got to know each other well. And it just made sense, like if we were going to continue to grow and build and invest, that we do it together. And so we decided to take that leap. And when we did that, the first fund was an open thesis. It was just seed stage, but we'll invest in anything seed stage. And it was just me. And I was just leveraging my network that I built after a decade of being an entrepreneur for deals and deal flow, and invested in 21 companies in that first one. And
very nice.
And, and we did doing pretty well. The fund's doing pretty well, but we didn't really have a core thesis for, like, if we're really going to grow this thing and really be a large fund, you have to have a thesis that can differentiate you. And when we thought about what differentiates us, we actually thought it was our place, like the place in what I explained, right? We call it like the place-based advantage or the Minnesota advantage, and really trying to leverage the corporate backbone here. And we had really strong relationships with a lot of the senior executives at these places already. And so we wanted to leverage those relationships to drive what we feel is a truly differentiated fund and value prop that we bring to our founders. I mean, it's why we win deals. It's why we get into deals. It's why we're able to support deals more effectively. The entrepreneurs we invest in more effectively and efficiently than other funds can in the food space post-investment. And so we think in the long run, that will really provide outsized returns for our investors. And so that's how we pitch it and how we try and operate right now.
Yeah. And so when did you finally decide to be called Bread and Butter? And let's talk about, if you are able to, a couple of those companies you've invested in, specifically on the food and ag tech side of things, and some of those lessons that you've learned in almost 8 years now of operations.
We formally changed the name to Bread and Butter when Mary and I partnered in 2020. And so we now call everything Bread and Butter. All the funds are Bread and Butter funds. It used to be called the Syndicate Fund, which was a terrible name.
Very business. Very serious.
I'm not good at naming things. I've never named any of my companies. Other people have always come up with the names. And when I try to name something and it ends up with a name like the Syndicate Fund, which might not have been it was fine, but Bread and Butter is way better, way more fun.
Yeah.
And so, naming is not one of my strengths for sure. So that's when we became Bread and Butter. We changed the name to Bread and Butter, and now everything's Bread and Butter, which is really fun. And it is so funny because almost every time we get pitched by a founder, like, our Bread and Butter is, and it's usually not on purpose. Because it's just a saying people say all the time, right? Like, oh, what's your bread and butter? They'll look at me after they say it and they're like, oh, crap. They'll be like, oh, man, I can't believe I just how corny was that? And I'm like, it's all right. Everybody does it. My bread and butter is this. And you lean into it. It's fun.
It's perfect. And again, we love corny in the Midwest.
We do. From an investment standpoint, I'm happy to talk about a couple different investments, but from a food tech thesis, I'd love to just, here's what we think about. Like, here's how I think about food tech and when we think about what we invest in. And so called it full stack food since I've been investing in food. So we invest it from on-farm supply chain, manufacturing, logistics, all the way to the future of food retail. And so it's like, how do we like more effectively get the food? How do we more effectively move the food? How do we more effectively get the food to the consumer is really what we think about. The vast majority of our investments are in software and robotics. And so we focus largely on the software side and the robotics side. We don't invest in consumer products at all. And we do a little bit of deep tech, but not as much like the alt protein, the cell-based stuff. So we don't really do much in that world, but we will get into deep tech in some other areas of the food system. So that's what we invest in. And where we think about like in that value chain moves depending on what we're seeing in the market, where we think the macro is going. We've always been really interested in the supply chain manufacturing space of food because there's so much opportunity there. And when you think about entrepreneurship and how do you build big companies, you tackle really big problems. And the food supply chains, I argue, is the most complicated in the world because it's perishable, it's heavy, and you have to move it, right? And the only thing that might come close is pharmaceuticals, right? Because those are similar in a way. But the food system is like so complex and the supply chain is so complex and difficult. And we're actually really good at it in most parts of the world right now. But there's still a lot that can be done with modern technology that can make it even better. So I've always been super interested in that supply chain, the messy middle, if you will, of the food system.
Yeah. And the fact that it has to be so regulated, not only from an ingredient standpoint, but let's think about someone like me. I've got food allergies. So you have to be really straightforward as well about how things are being made. So what are some of the innovations that you've funded that help out with these areas? I want to hear more about the robotics. That sounds really cool, especially for someone who's in agriculture and how that's working.
Yeah, I'll go give you two examples on the robotics side, or a couple examples on the robotics side. More recently, we've been investing in robots for the restaurant space is where we've been playing more so than on farm. We do have one farm robotics investment as well. But so Earth Senses are the name of our on farm robot, and you should check them out. It's really cool, really neat, really cool technology. We have a company called Caldo, which is doing some really neat things in like the food service space. And so they're making it easier right now for large enterprises that want to have snacks on hand, things like that for their employees to distribute snacks using robotics and hardware. So it's not like a communal jar. It's not individually like wrapped plastics. And so it's a bit of a environmental play too. So that's what they're doing. And then a third one is a company called X Robotics, which has a pizza robot, which is really cool. And so X Robotics, what they do is there's been several pizza robotics companies out there, but one of the big issues that we always saw was the CapEx and the requirements to change the footprint of a pizza store wasn't really feasible. And so what X Robotics does and why we got really excited about them before we invested was really small footprint, and it did one thing really well. It tops pizzas. And so the X Robotics pizza robot, like literally you put a crust in there, it does everything else. And so it can tie into your POS system. So if you have a pepperoni pizza, you put a crust in, it automatically puts sauce, cheese, and pepperonis on it and a variety of other things. And really interesting company doing really well. The pizza topping robot side. So those are a couple of the examples that we have in the robotics space that we've invested in. Most of our investments are software, but the pizza one's always kind of cool. If you go to their website, they have some really killer videos that are just like watching a pizza getting topped by a robot is cathartic in some ways. It's kind of like the pressure washing ones where you watch people like those types of videos, same thing.
I love that. I will definitely look this up and include a link in the show notes so that we can go down that therapeutic journey of watching the toppings happen. Now, I do want to bring in a really important topic for food and hospitality based on that and based on what you're investing in. So at the heart of hospitality, it's all about care, right? It's about a sense of love and humanity. So when you are looking at some of these great innovations, again, yes, maybe someone doesn't want to be just topping pizzas for the rest of their life. It frees them up so that they can work on a different craft in the sense of culinary art that you've got there behind the scenes. How do you think those folks are doing a good job of still putting a sense of humanity into something robotic or into something that's AI-based?
Man, it's an interesting question. With food, you got to think about food two ways. And I think that one is the nice to have, right? Like the high end, the nice to have, like the experiential part of it. And I love that, right? Personally, I love those things and I love that. It's harder to build a startup in that side of the world because the market's not as big.
It's very niche and everyone's different.
Yeah. And there's a lot of startups that try because they feel like a certain pain point on a variety of different things. You could build a good business there, but what you end up running into is it's not venture backable and can cause some issues for yourself as a founder. Then there's like people need to eat, right? And people need to eat calories, and people are very conscientious of costs, especially today, right? Of cost of food and how do you get the calories that you need and how do you get healthy calories you need, not just like crap. And a lot of the stuff that we invest in helps there. How do you feed the world? How do you, feed the masses? And things like AI and things like robotics really can help make food more accessible, good food more accessible, make good food more cost effective and cost efficient. And that's the way we think about it. Like, how do we solve like a lot of the big problems, whether it's food waste or accessibility or whatever other issues are in the food value chain, or not having enough people to work at a restaurant, which is a huge pain point. There's huge labor shortages across the entire food value chain. Like, robotics aren't replacing humans. Like, they're doing jobs that people can't find humans to do right now. And same with AI largely in the food system. And so that's the way we think about it, is like, how do we solve a really, really big problem? So we have a bunch of supply chain companies in our portfolio that are trying to solve big problems, like preventing like shortages, preventing issues with different types of laws around, are things being produced ethically? Like, are you tracking and tracing how things were produced, stuff like that. So there's all different kinds of stuff that technology can really play a role in the ecosystem.
I think that's really cool because, again, people hear the words AI and they hear robots, and we can all get a little scared. You've got kids, you've seen Wall-E. We've seen what happens when we don't treat the robots nicely and our earth. And I do love that even though you have multiple parts of the fund, they really play into each other because, as we know, food and health go hand in hand. So let's talk a little bit about trends that you are seeing across those really important industries that any listener on here really cares about, which is food waste, food accessibility, and specifically what we're seeing from an ingredient standpoint, from a labor standpoint, when it comes to the food and hospitality and ag businesses, because no one knows what regulations are coming out or what ordinances. And it's a very challenging time for folks within those industries.
Yeah, it's hard to build, like from a startup perspective, it's really hard to build a big company, a dependable company based on anything any government is doing. Because things change, like they're unpredictable, like with new people come new rules and laws and regulations and stuff. I'm always hesitant to invest against anything like that because it's unpredictable. And so when we think about startups, we think about what's the fundamental problem that you're solving within an organization or for an organization. And so, but it can't be the only problem you can be solving in general. Like, we're not super interested in it if it's just based on a new law that was passed, because they can come and go. And they do come and go. And so that's not as interesting to us. And so we try to take like longer term, 10 years from now, what does the world look like and how do we get there? And so we have a company in our portfolio called Trade Verified as an example, and it touches on some of the regulatory stuff. But what they do is they help companies manage and monitor international supply chains. And it doesn't really matter what their regulation is, but recently there's been some new acts around like forced labor where companies in the US and EU aren't allowed to source any types of raw material ingredients from anyone that has any type of forced labor in their facilities outside the US or in anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's, for big companies, it's actually harder than you think, right, to manage and monitor all of their suppliers. It's not necessarily because of their direct suppliers. Their direct suppliers usually have stuff, pretty well, but their direct suppliers have suppliers, and those suppliers have suppliers. And so you're talking about a supply chain that goes like 5 deep, like great grandchildren suppliers. And how do you monitor and manage that? And most of the time when somebody breaks this rule, it's not because they wanted to. It's because they didn't have the information or weren't able to get the information about it. And so Trade Verified helps manage and monitor, but that's just one regulation, right? Like, there's a variety of different things that they can manage. They also potentially monitor and manage like environmental risk of your supply chain. And so if you're dependent upon a wheat supplier out of Mexico and they're in a drought, you'd think that big corporations might be really good at monitoring and managing that, but sometimes they forget or sometimes they don't. And suppliers that are supplying big food enterprises that need food to run manufacturing aren't always great at saying, oh, by the way, we're not going to make your shipment on time, because they don't want to lose the business, right? It's human nature. And so that's a supply chain company that we're an investor in that's working with a lot of large enterprises right now and trying to help them understand what their supply chains look like. So that's one example on one side. Another example, a company that we're working with, is a company called Gadia. And what Gadia does is for companies that have large, valuable brands, they monitor what's going on with your brand online. And so if you remember last year, a lot of things happened to Bud Light. And And regardless of like where you like sit on Bud Light, like it cost Anheuser-Busch literally billions and billions of dollars in market cap. And Gudea built some technology and some software that helps manage and monitor like how does things start on the internet and how do they spread and what's likely to spread, what's not likely to spread. So they can kind of predict virality, and they understand all different kinds of parts of the web, from dark to not as dark web, the portions of the web. And so they can give large enterprises a several week heads up on what's coming, what should you do about it, what do you do? And it can be for the positive too, like, hey, this is going really well, you should double down on this, or this might be trouble, like you might want to pull back, or you want to at least go head it off, and here's where you can head it off. They can also like work with a lot of big food brands, work with influencers and pay these influencers lots of money. And it's really hard to measure ROI with those influencers. What's real, what's not? Is it spreading with bots or is it spreading with human beings? What are the demographics of those human beings? And so they can give a lot of that kind of information too. And so it's another example of a company that we work with that you might not think is like a food tech company, but has huge applications to the way the food system manages their businesses. And a big part of why does General Mills care exists, because they have really valuable brands, right? And if something happens to one of them, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And we're living in a time where misinformation just gets spread like wildfire. So I imagine that they help with that as well of, okay, you might need to put something out there that clarifies a different point that somehow has come up here.
And whether it's misinformation or not, like if people believe it, doesn't matter, right? In a sense. So it's understanding of like how it's spreading and where it's spreading can help you head it off, can help you be proactive faster than you've ever been able to as a large organization.
Yeah. What are you looking to next? What do you hope for the future? It's been 8 years of bread and butter, specifically in the food and ag tech space. What would you love to see over the next 5 years? Again, things are constantly changing, including the things we can't control, like our climate.
Yeah, it's a more effective, efficient food supply chain. Like I think that how do we become better at demand prediction, which basically trickles down to managing your supply chain, managing what you grow. It can go all the way across where theoretically we can use technology to almost make us like a perfectly efficient system. And that's not going to happen for a long, long time. But think about a world where you literally grow exactly what's going to be consumed and you don't lose any of it along the way. And that's like a crazy long way out, but it's one of the things that AI and technology can help unlock. Now, like human beings are naturally unpredictable in some ways. And so I don't think we'll ever get perfect, but like you can get a lot closer than the call it 30% like food waste that we have in the world. There's different numbers depending on where you are, but there's ways that we should be better than that, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opportunities for startups to be a big part of that and build big companies doing it. How do you more effectively sell? How do you more effectively manage the food safety of your products? Technology is going to play a big role in all this. I do think like when you get to like the all protein side of the world, like I still think there's a world where like literally I'll have a Keurig machine for meat, you know, where I push a button and a T-bone steak drops out. Probably not in my lifetime, but I think that's going to happen at some point, which is kind of cool too. And so there's all kinds of neat things that like are coming to the food world.
I think that's cool if you think about it too, in the sense that if you've listened to some past episodes we've had so far, a lot of the folks who are working in kitchens or with agriculture directly, they always say, we're just trying to get back to basics at this point. There was this trend, especially in the middle of the 20th century, where it was all about just synthetics. And we've gotten to this overproduced sense of food, and there's just so much chemicals and things that, again, are great from a preservative perspective and are cheap, but they aren't real food. And so I love the sense that we could use technology to create what is the perfect sense of real food again, without a sense of waste, with perhaps less pollution behind it. I think there could be a really cool balance between the two where we're helping rebuild Mother Nature in that sense, but through technology
and customization, right? Like technology makes it easier to have a wider variety of like options and optionality. And you've seen like the rise of the small brand over the last decade versus like the dominance of the big giant brands, which is interesting. But you also have to think that too often people crap on the anti-GMO thing, right? If we didn't have GMOs on the world, like people would starve, right? And it's okay if you want to be non-GMO, that's fine. Like that's totally fine if you have like the wealth and the ability to do it. There's a lot of people in the world that don't. And I think that gets forgotten too often in the food system. A lot of the advancements we've made in the food system have enabled like the population we currently have, for better or for worse. But if you stop now, if you don't use like some of the technology or you remove it, that might be okay for you because you can afford it or you have access to nutrients and healthy things that for your family. But like there's a lot of families that might not, and they need GMO, like GMO based products and stuff like that. So I know that's not exactly where you're going, but it is like a thing that I often think gets forgotten when you talk about like customization or like the synthetics in the food system, stuff like that. You need to feed the world still, right?
Yeah. And I think that that's an important point too, from the food accessibility standpoint, is it sucks that fast food is always like the cheapest, quickest thing, right? Yes, for a treat every now and then, that's great, but not when it's your go-to meal. And we have so many food deserts as well within the country and in very purposeful neighborhoods and areas. And so I love the idea that you're also thinking about not only how can we feed everyone, but is there a way that we can do this where everyone can feel like they have access to the best food possible for them?
Yeah. And technology can like help with all of this stuff, right? And anytime you invest in a food tech company, it's cool because even if they're not a mission-driven company, they're all making the food system more sustainable because they're making it more efficient, more effective. It doesn't matter, right? What we invest in, it is an impact company in a way, because if you help make the food system more effective, like you're going to have an impact on the people and the planet.
Yeah, everybody eats. We all have to.
Everybody does eat.
And we all deserve to eat well as well.
Some of us love eating like me.
Some of us love to eat. Me too. Don't get me started. That's why we've got this podcast here. So what do you want to see for the future of the fund and what you're thinking about doing? And really, what have been those big lessons over the last 8 years?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest lesson is a reinforcement of something that we knew going into it, but sometimes we lose sight of, which is investing in startups is 100% about the people leading those startups and not about the idea.
Yeah.
Some of the worst investments I've seen myself make, but also other people make, it's like an idea you're really excited about or you're passionate about or you've thought of. You're like, oh, this needs to exist. Then you invest because of that. And if you don't have the right people behind it, it doesn't matter. And if you have the right people behind a mediocre idea, they usually can figure it out, or they can come up with a new idea, or they can pivot quickly, or they can iterate quickly. And so I'd say the largest learning is a reinforcement of something that I think I knew going in, but it really has been crystallized. Like when we invest, we say we invest in like 6 things: team, product, market, traction. And it's probably more heavily weighted to team than even that. And so that's the biggest thing that we always remind ourselves of. And we always ask as a team on our side, how are the people? How are the people? How are the people? Oh, yeah. Do they have it? Can they do it? Can they build it? Do they want to build it? Where do they need help? Because nobody's perfect. No startup's perfect in any way, shape, or form.
Amazing. So I'm going to ask you one last question before we get to the world's best and hardest question. So what would be your biggest advice for anyone who is looking to become an entrepreneur, to start their business, whether it is in food or otherwise? And what's the best way to approach an investor like you? Because I think you've probably seen it across the gamut, what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. Just do it is the best advice. I think too many people just sit on their hands. Like they come with an idea, they're like, oh, this should exist. And then they don't do anything about it. Take the leap. I think that the risk of entrepreneurship is way overstated, in my personal opinion, as an entrepreneur. And I thought about this when I was like becoming a founder too, which is, man, like you can always hopefully go get a job, right? Or you can have a job and hustle on the side. Like just do it and try and do it. You learn so much, and don't worry about having the thing perfect. If your product is perfect the first time somebody uses it, you overbuilt. Flat out. If you're not embarrassed by your product the first time you show it to somebody, like you have overdone it. I think too many people get caught up on it's not perfect, it's not ready. Just show it to people. The lean startup should be everybody's Bible, right? How do you iterate? How do you get something out in a week? Get some feedback, iterate, and try again and try again. Speed is what startups have as an advantage over large enterprises. And so go just start doing something. That's my mantra, is just do it. You won't ever regret it. If you start something, just try, you're not going to regret it. So go do that. Getting in touch with investors. Investing is like a lot of things. It can be a very closed system and hard to get in touch with investors. And so start networking now, wherever you're at. Attend the community startup events, start meeting people, start saying yes. Like everybody has value to add to somebody. And so make sure people know what your value to add to other people is. And then when they ask you to do something, say yes. And don't ask for anything in return. So if somebody asks you to like mentor, say, sure. If somebody asks you to give a talk, say yes. If somebody asks you to like meet a friend because they're working on an idea that you might have some expertise in, say yes. And so that's how I kind of started building my network in the entrepreneurial world. Was like, I was good at one thing, maybe. So my last company, Boom Boom Prints, came about. I was pretty good at digital sales and marketing, and people were asking me for help. And I just said yes. And so somebody else had actually come up with that idea and then asked me to be CEO. And because I was just helping them on the side for free, for fun. And so a lot of like where I've gotten to today is just say yes to things. From a speaking side, people would ask me, hey, will you come talk to this class of 4 people? Sure. Who cares? And you just gradually build. And so build your network out by saying yes to things. Like I met my partner, Mary, by saying yes to mentoring for her nonprofit organization. The lead investor in my last company was because I mentored for a university's startup program system. And he happened, I didn't even know this, he happened to be associated with it. I met him through it. I just started saying yes to things and volunteering. And like Techstars does a great job of this, give first mentality. Yes. And give first, you'll be surprised at how much you get out of it. And so that's how you build your investor network, is just by putting yourself out there, starting trying to help other people first, and then you'll gradually, slowly build this network. And that's how you get the real meaningful investor relationships. So for us specifically, we actually do open office hours every Friday as a fund. And so anybody can go to our website and sign up. They tend to book a little ways out, but you can talk to any of us, myself, Mary, our other partner on the platform side, Steph. You can talk to any one of us, and we all do open office hours every week.
That's perfect. I'll also include that in the show notes. And I love that piece of advice because it's about, you got to start small or you're never going to start at all. And you shouldn't do things from that place of like, oh, okay, if I do something, someone will give me something in return. It's the matter of give to others, help others, care for others. And karmically, the universe is going to be there. It's going to have your back. And you just never know how it's going to happen.
And you'll have fun doing it. Like entrepreneurship's fun. And the cool thing about entrepreneurship is even if you think it's a stupid idea, right? I meet 600 founders a year. As a fund, we look at 2,500 startups every year. And I meet the 600 people. Every one of those meetings, not all, but the vast majority of the people, the founders I'm meeting with, they're passionate about their thing. And when people have passion, it makes it fun to work with them or try and help them. Like even if you're not getting anything out of it, like you are, because you're having fun with it. And so it's a really cool space to be in. And if you want to get started, like just start trying to help people and you'll love it. It's a ton of fun. If you don't, you probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur.
Agreed. And thank you for your passion. I really have felt it this whole conversation, and I'm excited for folks to hear all the amazing nuggets that you've shared. And, you know, maybe not chicken nuggets today, but that could be on the menu.
Nothing wrong with chicken nugget.
All right, Brett, let's get to the best question here for today. So again, for folks, The Perfect Bite is called The Perfect Bite because it's a bit of a perfect bite of my career to date, from journalist to entrepreneur myself and working with folks in food and bev. But it's also because each of us has our own unique perfect bite. We all have our own unique taste buds and experiences with food in this world. So whether it was a street taco when you visited Mexico City or your grandma's perfect cookie recipe that you ended up using to sell on the side of the road, we've all got just those special memories and moments with food. So Brett, I'd like to ask you, what is your perfect bite?
Really hard.
It's really hard. What comes to mind first?
Chicken wings, usually. Buffalo chicken wings is usually the thing that comes to mind when I think about like a perfect bite of food.
Tell us why. I love this. I never heard that one.
I love buffalo chicken wings. They've been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. There's this awesome buffalo chicken wing place in Minnesota that we've like, my wife and I started going there. It was like the bar that we go to when we first got here. But I've had some really meaningful conversations with this place, and I love buffalo chicken wings in general. My first restaurant that I worked at a restaurant, we made awesome buffalo chicken wings. And I was the deep fat fryer. I could put them down and sling some buffalo chicken wings as good as anybody on the line. And so, I don't know. I love buffalo chicken wings. A good buffalo. It's got to be with blue cheese dressing.
Blue cheese, not ranch. Oh, wow.
Yep. Blue cheese guy. I'm a big blue cheese dressing guy. Like the wing places that people say are great because they have 1,000 different varieties. Nope. Like just pure buffalo sauce is the way to go. I like the other ones too, but if you had to have one, just a good buffalo chicken wing. Yeah.
I love this answer. Can you handle spice? Do you like spicier?
I do. I can handle spice. With my buffalo chicken wings, though, I don't like it to get in the way of the flavor of the wing. Yeah, sometimes I'll throw some garlic. When I make them, I'll make them too at home, and I'll grill them. Mm. I'll smoke some wings and then make buffalo-style smoked wings. I'll throw some garlic in the hot sauce sometimes and make like hot garlic buffalo wings. Those are really good too.
More garlic, the better, at least for me.
In general in life. I agree. That's another thing. I agree with you completely. More garlic, the better in things.
100%. Oh my gosh. So, well, you were on the Perfect Bite today, but we might have to get you on Hot Ones next.
I don't know if I can handle that.
Brett, this was incredible. Thank you again for taking the time and for sharing your story and how you're working with others who are changing the world from a food perspective, plus tech.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It was fun.
So, Brett, where can everyone find you? Can you list the social accounts that we should be looking bread and butter on, the website, other spots that we can work with you and your partners?
Yeah, it's breadandbutterventures.com is our website. All of the socials are linked there. I'm actually not really on any socials other than X is where I live, and LinkedIn, actually. If anybody's interested, there's this whole channel on YouTube called Brett's Brain, and it's small snips for entrepreneurs. So they're like 2-minute to 5-minute clips about like entrepreneurial best practices. And I think there's a couple hundred of them out there now. And so it's something that we put out pretty regularly. It's something like I'll have a meeting with a founder. I'm like, man, I've heard the same question 10 times. So I'll record a video about it and put it out there. So that's what the one other thing I'd put out there as a resource for founders.
I think that's amazing. We'll definitely include that here as well. I love that. Brett's Brain. We always love the alliteration here today.
A lot of alliteration. A lot of alliteration.
Oh, thank you again, Brett. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. This was Brett Brohl's Perfect Bite. Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media @PerfectBitePod. Now go get something good to eat.